Before we start, I need a favor. Let me know in the comments what's been done right or wrong. This also helps me create better content for you all, and check out our Creepy Tales playlist up the videos. With the most views, likes, and comments will form the channel. And now we begin. Chapter 1. Sarah Winters. Sarah Winters unlocks her apartment door at 11:30 p.m. after working a double shift at the medical center, completely unaware that someone has been watching her routine for 3 weeks. As she reaches for the light switch, a voice from the darkness speaks her name with intimate familiarity. "Hello, Sarah. You have your mother's eyes." The man sitting in her kitchen chair appears to be in his 60s, with wild gray hair and pale skin that suggests years without sunlight. His clothes are institutional, the kind worn by people in hospitals or asylums. "You don't remember me," he continues softly, and Sarah asks, "Who are you?" He smiles with genuine warmth as he responds, "I'm Ezekiel Thorne, your mother's spiritual guide from the Eternal Light Fellowship." Sarah's blood runs cold at the mention of her mother's old cult, the religious group Mary had fled from when Sarah was barely old enough to remember. "My mother left that group decades ago," Sarah says, reaching for her phone, but Thorne shakes his head sadly as he replies, "Mary never truly left. None of my devoted followers ever really escaped." He stands slowly, moving with careful precision. "I've been tracking all the children who were born within our sacred circle," he explains, and Sarah stammers, "What do you want from me?" His expression becomes almost paternal as he responds, "I want to fulfill the promise your mother made when she dedicated your life to our cause before you were even born." Sarah manages to dial 911, but her phone displays no signal despite showing full bars moments earlier. "Technology becomes unreliable around me now," Thorne explains casually, and Sarah backs toward her bedroom door as she asks, "What promise?" He reaches into his jacket and produces a faded photograph showing a younger Mary holding a baby during what appears to be some kind of ceremony. "This was your dedication ceremony," Thorne explains, and the photograph shows Sarah's mother standing among robed figures in a forest clearing, holding an infant toward a crude altar. "Your mother dedicated you to she who devours," Thorne says, and Sarah tries to run for her bedroom, but he moves with inhuman speed, blocking her path. "I spent 30 years in Blackwater Asylum learning to channel the goddess's power," he tells her conversationally, and his eyes reflect light in a way that seems wrong for normal human vision. "You're insane," Sarah says, backing against her living room wall, and Thorne chuckles as he replies, "Sanity is a limitation I've transcended." To demonstrate his point, he reaches toward her with hands that stretch further than arms should allow, his fingers extending while maintaining their basic human shape. "The goddess requires 15 sacrifices to manifest in this realm," Thorne explains as his impossible hands wrap around Sarah's throat, and Sarah struggles against his grip, but his strength feels supernatural. 15 daughters of devoted followers, each killed in a specific manner that weakens the barrier between dimensions. "Your mother dedicated you to this purpose before you could speak," he whispers, as Sarah's vision begins to darken, and she feels his grip tighten with mechanical precision. Her last coherent thought is confusion about how her mother's attempt to escape a dangerous cult had ultimately led to this moment. Thorne releases her lifeless body and carefully arranges her on the floor in a specific position, her arms crossed over her chest and her head pointing toward magnetic north. From his pocket, he produces a small leather pouch and collects a lock of Sarah's hair, a few drops of her blood, and the silver necklace she wore. "One gateway opened," he murmurs to himself, and the air around Sarah's body begins to shimmer with heat distortion despite the apartment's normal temperature. 14 more daughters of devotion to collect, and then Cal-ratha will walk among us again. He steps through Sarah's front door and disappears into the night, leaving behind a crime scene that will puzzle investigators as they try to explain the impossible forensic evidence and the victim's complete lack of connection to her killer. Chapter 2. Jessica Morrison. Jessica Morrison finishes her evening swim at the community pool, unaware that Ezekiel Thorne has been studying her schedule for 2 weeks. As she emerges from the water at closing time, she finds a maintenance worker who shouldn't be there. Pool's closed. She calls out, but the man turns toward her with pale eyes that reflect the underwater lighting strangely. "Jessica Morrison," Thorne says, his voice carrying across the water with unnatural clarity, and she asks, "How do you know my name?" He steps closer, his institutional clothing somehow wet despite never entering the water. "I knew your mother Patricia before you were born. Back when she understood the sacred nature of water ceremonies." Jessica wraps her towel tighter as recognition dawns. "You're from that cult my mom was in," she says, backing toward the exit, but Thorne nods as he responds. "The Eternal Light Fellowship, where your mother learned about ritual purification. My mother never mentioned drowning rituals," Jessica says, reaching for her phone, but the device shows only static. "Patricia participated in many ceremonies she chose to forget," Thorne explains. And he produces photographs of a younger Patricia standing in a forest lake, holding a baby during an underwater baptism ceremony. "This was your dedication to Cal-ratha," Thorne says, showing images of Jessica's mother among robed figures. "Your mother promised your life to she who devours during aquatic devotion. A promise that requires purification by sacred drowning." Jessica tries to run, but Thorne moves across the pool deck with fluid grace. "I escaped Blackwater Asylum 6 months ago," he tells her, and she asks, "Why are you telling me this?" His smile becomes cold as he responds, "Because you deserve to understand your purpose." 6 months to locate the 15 daughters. Thorne continues, and Jessica notices the pool water around his feet moving in impossible patterns. Each sacrifice weakens the barriers between our world and Cal-ratha's realm. The pool water starts rising despite no pumps running, flowing upward to form spirals around Thorne. Sarah Winters was the first gateway, he explains as water tendrils reach toward Jessica, and she finds the exit door locked. "Your purification opens the second portal," Thorne says, and water wraps around Jessica's ankles with purposeful intelligence. "The goddess grants me dominion over elements that will claim her daughters." Jessica struggles against liquid restraints as more water coils around her. "This is impossible," she gasps, and Thorne replies, "Impossibility distinguishes the sacred from mundane. Your mother understood when she offered your life to transcendent forces." The water lifts Jessica and carries her toward the deep end while Thorne walks on the pool's surface. Patricia believed she could escape her obligations, he explains, and Jessica pleads, "Please don't do this." His expression shows sympathy as he responds, "But promises to goddesses cannot be broken by human will." "Tell your mother that Cal-ratha remembers every offering," Thorne says as water forces Jessica beneath the surface, and she struggles against restraints stronger than steel. Her last thought is confusion about how pool water can hold her with such deliberate, calculated pressure. The water releases Jessica's body and returns to normal levels as Thorne collects ritual components: wet hair, lung water, and her silver bracelet. 2 gateways opened, he murmurs as air above the pool shimmers with geometric heat distortion. The barriers grow thinner. Soon Cal-ratha will taste mortal air again. Chapter 3. Amanda Chen. Amanda Chen returns to her apartment from graduate school at 10:15 p.m., carrying research books about ancient religious practices. As she climbs to her 3rd-floor unit, she smells burning incense from her supposedly empty apartment. When she unlocks her door, she finds candles arranged in a perfect circle around her living room, flames dancing in patterns that respond to her presence. "Welcome home, Amanda," comes a voice from her kitchen, and she sees Ezekiel Thorne sitting at her table with an ancient leather book. His pale skin appears translucent in candlelight, and he's wearing dark robes that absorb shadows. "You've been studying the wrong religious practices," he tells her, and Amanda asks, "How did you get in?" He gestures to the book as he responds, "The same way your mother Linda summoned sacred flames, through devotion to powers beyond human understanding." Amanda drops her books as recognition dawns. "You're from the Eternal Light Fellowship," she says, backing toward her door, but the candles flare brighter and Thorne nods. "Your mother was our most gifted firekeeper," he explains. And Amanda stammers, "My mother never mentioned fire rituals." Thorne turns a page, revealing illustrations of robed figures around massive bonfires. "Linda participated in sacred burnings before you were born. Rituals that dedicated your life to Cal-ratha through purification by flame." The candles begin moving without being touched, sliding to form geometric patterns while flames grow larger. Fire remembers every sacred ceremony. Thorne explains as temperature rises, and Amanda asks, "What do you want?" His expression becomes gentle as he responds, "To complete the promise your mother made when she offered your essence to she who devours." "I escaped Blackwater Asylum to fulfill ancient obligations," Thorne continues, standing slowly, and Amanda notices flames dancing around his fingertips without fuel. 6 months of preparation to locate 15 daughters, each destined for sacrifice in their mother's prescribed manner. Amanda tries reaching her phone, but it grows too hot to touch. "Technology fails in sacred fire's presence," Thorne explains, and flames around his hands brighten. From the book, he produces photographs showing younger Linda Chen among robed figures, holding a baby toward a massive bonfire. "This was your dedication ceremony," he explains, and Amanda stares at images of her mother in infant sacrifice rituals. The candles rotate around Amanda in slow circles, flames reaching toward her, while air fills with sulfur and burning herbs. Sarah Winters opened the first gateway through strangulation. Thorne explains, and Amanda asks, "Who is Sarah Winters?" His smile darkens as he responds, "The first daughter to fulfill her promise, followed by Jessica Morrison through sacred drowning." "Your burning opens the third portal," Thorne says, and flames leap from his hands toward Amanda with supernatural intelligence, wrapping around her arms like liquid fire that burns without consuming. "Each sacrifice weakens dimensional barriers. Each death brings Cal-ratha closer to manifestation." Amanda struggles against flame restraints that feel solid despite being energy, while floating candles surround her. "This is impossible." She gasps as clothes begin smoldering, and Thorne replies, "Impossibility is divine intervention's nature. Your mother understood when she dedicated your essence to transcendent forces." "Tell Linda that Cal-ratha remembers her devotion," Thorne says as flames intensify around Amanda's body, and she screams as fire consumes her with calculated precision. Her last thought is horror at discovering her mother's dark rituals, followed by confusion about flames burning with deliberate intelligence. The flames return to normal candle size as Thorne collects ritual components, bone ashes, melted jewelry, and burned book fragments. 3 gateways opened, he murmurs as air crackles with electrical distortion spreading across walls. Barriers grow thinner. Cal-ratha's influence strengthens. Chapter 4. Lisa Rodriguez. Lisa Rodriguez arrives home from her evening shift at the pharmaceutical lab to find her kitchen filled with the scent of unknown herbs and rotting flowers. When she turns on the lights, Ezekiel Thorne stands beside her stove, stirring a bubbling concoction while dried plants hang from her ceiling. "Good evening, Lisa," Thorne says without looking up, his robes covered in stains that could be blood or plant matter. "Your mother, Carmen, taught me this recipe 30 years ago." back when she understood botanical communion. Lisa backs toward her door, but the air has become thick and humid. "You're from that cult my mother escaped," she says, reaching for her phone, and Thorne nods as he adds powders to his mixture. "The Eternal Light Fellowship, where your mother learned hallucinogenic sacraments." "My mother never mentioned drug rituals," Lisa stammers, but her phone shows swirling colors instead of contacts. "Carmen participated in botanical ceremonies before your birth," Thorne explains, and the mixture begins glowing with phosphorescent light. "Sacred communion that dedicated your life to Cal-ratha through chemical transcendence." From his robes, Thorne produces photographs showing younger Carmen Rodriguez among robed figures, drinking from a ceremonial cup while holding a baby during drug rituals. "This was your dedication," he explains, and Lisa stares at images of her mother in poisoning ceremonies. "Your mother promised your essence through botanical devotion," Thorne continues, and the mixture releases vapors that make air shimmer with rainbow distortions. "I escaped Blackwater Asylum to collect on promises. Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning." Lisa tries running, but herbal vapors make her dizzy. "Your purification through chemical communion opens the fourth gateway," Thorne says, ladling glowing mixture into a ceramic cup decorated with painful symbols. Each sacrifice follows the ritual pattern established by Mother's ceremonies. Thorne explains approaching with the cup, and Lisa notices plants growing at visible speeds, leaves reaching toward her. Carmen specialized in botanical transcendence, using sacred plants to dissolve barriers between consciousness and divine revelation. The mixture seems to move with intelligence, swirling in patterns while releasing vapors that blur Lisa's vision. "This is impossible," she gasps, and Thorne smiles as he responds. "Impossibility distinguishes sacred chemistry from mundane science. Your mother learned this during communion rituals. I've perfected this recipe during months of freedom." Thorne continues, his eyes reflecting the mixture's glow. "Each ingredient harvested from locations where the goddess's influence is strongest." Plants in Lisa's kitchen begin moving without wind, branches wrapping around her limbs while Thorne forces the cup toward her lips. "Tell Carmen that Cal-ratha remembers her botanical devotion," he says as glowing liquid burns Lisa's throat, and she feels consciousness expanding in directions human minds can't process. Lisa's last thought is terror at experiencing visions more real than reality, followed by horrifying realization that she's glimpsing Cal-ratha's realm through weakened dimensional barriers. The mixture completes its work as Lisa convulses and stops breathing, consciousness torn between realities before dissolving. Thorne collects ritual components: blood mixed with plants, vapor-absorbed hair, and the ceremonial cup. 4 gateways opened, he murmurs as air crackles with dimensional static making walls transparent, revealing otherworldly landscapes beyond normal space. Barriers weaken. Cal-ratha's influence spreads through chemical transcendence. Chapter 5. Rebecca Stone. Rebecca Stone returns to her art studio at midnight after teaching pottery class, unaware that Ezekiel Thorne has been waiting among her sculptures. When she flips the light switch, nothing happens, but the studio is illuminated by her ceramic pieces that glow with inner light pulsing like heartbeats. "Beautiful work, Rebecca," Thorne says from shadows near her kiln, examining a glazed vase with appreciation. His robes appear made of clay that shifts and flows like liquid pottery. "Your mother Dorothy taught you well. She was gifted with sacred geometry." Rebecca backs toward her door, finding it sealed shut. "You're from the Eternal Light Fellowship," she says, recognizing pale eyes that reflect her ceramic's glow, and Thorne nods as he traces geometric patterns in air with his finger, leaving light trails suspended in space. "Dorothy was our most talented sacred architect," Thorne explains, and Rebecca's pottery wheel begins spinning without power, clay rising to form impossible shapes defying gravity. She understood certain geometric configurations weakened dimensional barriers, knowledge she used to dedicate your life to Cal-ratha through ritual stabbing in sacred patterns. From his flowing robes, Thorne produces a ceremonial dagger with obsidian blade covered in geometric engravings that move when viewed directly. This blade was blessed by your mother 30 years ago, he explains, and Rebecca stares as recognition dawns with horrible clarity. My mother never mentioned stabbing rituals. Rebecca stammers, but Thorne produces photographs showing younger Dorothy Stone among robed figures, holding a baby while carving ritual patterns into an altar with the same dagger. This was your dedication ceremony, he explains, showing images of her mother and infant sacrifice rituals. Your mother promised your essence through sacred geometry, Thorne continues, and ceramic pieces throughout Rebecca's studio begin rearranging into complex patterns that hurt to look at. Each cut opens small gateways between worlds. 15 cuts in proper configuration complete your transformation into dimensional anchor. Rebecca tries grabbing a sculpture for defense, but ceramics move away with intelligence while others float to surround her geometrically. I escaped Blackwater Asylum to collect on promises, Thorne explains, and Rebecca asks, what promises? His smile darkens as he responds, commitments that claimed Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning, Lisa Rodriguez through chemical transcendence. Your ritual stabbing opens the 5th gateway, Thorne says, and the obsidian dagger glows with same light as Rebecca's pottery. Each sacrifice follows Mother's ceremonial patterns. Your mother specialized in sacred geometry, channeling dimensional energy through calculated wounds. Floating ceramics spin around Rebecca in orbital patterns while Thorne approaches with the blade. Tell Dorothy that Cal-ratha remembers her geometric devotion, he says, making the first cut across Rebecca's palm, and she screams as the wound opens in a perfect line glowing with supernatural light. Tell her the Fellowship's sacred architecture continues through daughters who become living foundations, Thorne adds, making additional cuts across her arms and torso, each forming part of a larger pattern existing in more than 3 dimensions. Rebecca's consciousness fragments as ritual cuts accumulate, and she realizes each wound creates tears in reality itself, allowing glimpses of Cal-ratha's realm to bleed through. The obsidian blade completes geometric work as Rebecca's life flows into dimensional anchor patterns, blood-tracing power lines stabilizing gateways between worlds. Thorne collects components, blood-soaked clay, ceramic fragments in sacred geometry, obsidian pieces absorbing her essence. 5 gateways opened, he murmurs as air warps visibly, showing otherworldly architecture through space wounds. Barriers weaken. Cal-ratha's realm grows closer through sacred geometric foundations. Chapter 6. Diana Foster. Diana Foster awakens at 3:33 a.m. to find gravity failing, her furniture floating above the floor while shadows move independently. Standing at her bed's foot is Ezekiel Thorne, his form flickering between solid matter and translucent energy as reality seems uncertain of his status. Good morning, Diana, Thorne says, voice coming from multiple directions as if spoken by several versions existing in the same space. Your mother Helen loved midnight hours, when she understood darkness holds more truth than daylight. Diana tries sitting up but finds herself floating above her mattress, normal physics no longer replying. You're the cult leader my mother escaped, she says, reaching for her phone only to watch it phase through her fingers. The Eternal Light Fellowship, where your mother learned reality's flexibility. My mother never mentioned reality manipulation. Diana stammers as bedroom walls begin breathing like tissue, and Thorne nods while shifting between human and abstract forms. Helen participated in dimensional ceremonies before your birth, rituals teaching her to bend space and time according to divine will. From robes woven from darkness, Thorne produces photographs showing clearly despite impossible lighting. Images reveal younger Helen Foster among robed figures in a forest clearing existing in multiple dimensions, holding a baby while reality warps around them. This was your dedication through dimensional transcendence, Thorne explains, and Diana stares at images of her mother in ceremonies where space bends to accommodate supernatural forces. Your mother promised your essence to Cal-ratha through mastery over existence's fundamental structures. The photographs move like living memories, showing Helen manipulating gravity, bending light, stepping through space tiers while cultists chant in pre-human languages. Helen specialized in dimensional flexibility, Thorne continues, and Diana's bedroom expands beyond architectural boundaries, walls stretching into impossible distances. I escaped Blackwater Asylum to collect on promises, Thorne explains while demonstrating abilities defying natural law. Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning, Lisa Rodriguez through chemical transcendence, Rebecca Stone through geometric stabbing. Your dimensional dissolution opens the sixth gateway, Thorne says, and Diana realizes she's losing cohesion, body becoming translucent as reality treats her existence as optional. Each sacrifice follows Mother's ceremonial patterns. Your mother learned manipulating space and time's basic structures. Diana tries screaming, but sound waves scatter across dimensional boundaries as her voice fractures. Tell Helen that Cal-ratha remembers her cosmic mastery. Thorne says as Diana's molecular structure separates into components drifting apart like smoke. Tell her the Fellowship's dimensional work continues through daughters becoming bridges between realities, he adds as Diana experiences watching her body dissolve into energy while remaining conscious. Diana's last thought is amazement that consciousness exists independently of physical form, followed by horror at becoming a permanent gateway component connecting Cal-ratha's realm to mortal space. Her dissolved essence reorganizes into patterns serving as living conduits between worlds, while Thorne collects components including scattered consciousness samples, reality fragments, and gravitational distortions anchoring future breaches. 6 gateways opened, he murmurs as Diana's bedroom becomes a nexus where multiple realities intersect, showing Cal-ratha's domain through impossible spatial windows. Barriers thin enough for direct manifestation. The goddess tastes mortal air through dimensional bridges. Chapter 7. Katie Walsh. Katie Walsh arrives home from her morgue shift to find her apartment filled with sounds of invisible entities moving through furniture, their presence marked by shifting objects and whispered conversations in pre-human languages. Standing in her living room is Ezekiel Thorne, surrounded by translucent figures like a court of the dead. "Welcome home, Katie," Thorne says, voice harmonizing with whispered chorus of invisible companions. "Your mother Barbara had such gift for communicating beyond the veil. When she understood death as merely another consciousness form." Katie backs toward her door, finding her path blocked by cold spots suggesting invisible presences. "You're from the Eternal Light Fellowship," she says, recognizing Thorne despite his supernatural entourage, and he nods while gesturing toward responding empty air. "Barbara was our most talented medium," Thorne explains, and Katie watches furniture rearranging according to unseen beings' directions. She channeled entities from dimensions where physical form is optional. Knowledge she used dedicating your life to Cal-ratha through ritual dismemberment, guided by otherworldly intelligence. From robes containing more space than physical dimensions allow, Thorne produces photographs handled by invisible entities. Images reveal younger Barbara Walsh among robed figures, holding a baby while translucent beings direct ceremonies involving surgical precision beyond human understanding. This was your dedication through guided dissection. Thorne explains, and Katie stares at images of her mother and rituals where invisible entities provide instruction for procedures blurring surgery and sacrifice lines. Your mother promised your essence through communion with beings understanding sacred geometry of living flesh. Photographs move under unseen hands, showing Barbara learning precise cuts guided by multi-dimensional entities. Barbara specialized in channeling surgical spirits. Thorne continues, and Katie notices medical instruments from her bag floating through air, arranging into operation preparation patterns. I escaped Blackwater Asylum to fulfill promises. Thorne explains as invisible entities examine Katie with unfelt touches. Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning, Lisa Rodriguez through chemical transcendence, Rebecca Stone through geometric stabbing, Diana Foster through dimensional dissolution. Your guided dismemberment opens the seventh gateway, Thorne says, and Katie realizes invisible entities position themselves like surgical teams preparing complex operations. Each sacrifice follows Mother's ceremonial patterns. Your mother served as conduit for beings possessing anatomical knowledge, transcending mortal understanding. Katie tries running, but invisible hands grip her with surgical precision while spectral voices discuss her anatomy in clinical terms, mixing medical consultation with religious ceremony. Tell Barbara that Cal-ratha remembers her service channeling otherworldly wisdom, Thorne says as first invisible blade makes precise incisions demonstrating anatomical knowledge beyond medical schools. Katie's last thought is professional amazement at surgical technique demonstrated on her body, followed by terror that invisible entities performing dismemberment possess medical knowledge that could revolutionize human anatomy understanding if not used sacrificially. Invisible surgical team completes guided dismemberment as Katie's life flows into otherworldly knowledge conduits, while Thorne collects components including surgically removed organs, spectral blessed instruments, and blood diagrams drawn by beyond perception entities. 7 gateways opened. He murmurs as Katie's apartment becomes a nexus where invisible entities manifest more solidly, marked by purposeful surgical equipment and medical knowledge, defying mortal understanding. Chapter 8. Michelle Park. Michelle Park awakens at 4 a.m. to find Ezekiel Thorne beside her bed, no longer entirely human with void eyes reflecting impossible depths. His presence fills her bedroom with psychic pressure, making her skull feel ready to crack. When he speaks, words bypass her ears and carve directly into consciousness. "Good morning, Michelle." Thorne's voice echoes inside her mind while his mouth remains motionless. Your mother Susan understood consciousness as malleable when she learned reshaping thoughts like clay. Michelle tries screaming but finds vocal cords paralyzed by mental commands. Thorne's psychic presence expands through her apartment like fog, and she realizes he's reading memories, examining thoughts, cataloging fears with clinical precision. Susan was our most gifted mind shaper, Thorne continues, mental voice accompanied by forced images. She channeled psychic energy from dimensions where thought and reality merge. Knowledge dedicating your life to Cal-ratha through mental dissolution. Michelle's walls become transparent to psychic vision, revealing younger Susan Park among robed figures in mental space rather than physical reality. Images show her mother learning to project lethal thoughts, rewrite memories, kill through psychological pressure while holding a baby whose mind-focused ceremonies blurring telepathy and torture. This was your dedication through psychic transcendence, Thorne explains, and Michelle experiences her mother's memories of rituals where mental energy rewrites consciousness structure. Your mother promised your essence through mind landscape mastery. Psychic pressure intensifies as Thorne demonstrates thought becoming physical force. Furniture moves according to mental commands while Michelle's memories rearrange against her will, childhood experiences edited to serve unknown purposes. I escaped Blackwater Asylum to collect on promises. Thorne's mental voice explains while Michelle feels personality dissected by psychic instruments existing only in consciousness. Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning, Lisa Rodriguez through chemical transcendence, Rebecca Stone through geometric stabbing, Diana Foster through dimensional dissolution, Katie Walsh through guided dismemberment. Your psychic annihilation opens the 8th gateway, Thorne says, and Michelle realizes he's erasing her from inside out, deleting memories, personality, self-sense while leaving consciousness intact to experience mental destruction. Michelle tries fighting with thoughts, but Thorne's abilities transcend human limitations through Cal-ratha connection. He rewrites resistance into compliance, transforms fear into acceptance, edits survival instincts into willing cooperation with psychological annihilation. Tell Susan that Cal-ratha remembers her mental transcendence service, Thorne says as Michelle feels identity dissolving like sugar in psychic acid, consciousness becoming dimensional manipulation material. Tell her the Fellowship's mind, shaping continues through daughters becoming psychic foundations. Michelle's last thought is realizing consciousness can be edited like documents, memories deleted like files, personality rewritten like code. Then understanding disappears as Thorne completes psychic erasure, leaving empty mind shells. Psychic dissolution completes as Michelle's consciousness becomes mental energy serving Cal-ratha's psychological influence, while Thorne collects components including destroyed memory fragments, erased personality residue, and mental patterns anchoring telepathic manifestations. 8 gateways opened, he murmurs as Michelle's apartment becomes nexus where thoughts take physical form and mental energy reshapes reality according to Cal-ratha's will. Chapter 9. Jennifer Hayes. Jennifer Hayes returns from biology class to find her apartment transformed. Ezekiel Thorne stands in her living room, but his human form dissolves into something terrible. Tentacle-like appendages emerge from his torso while skin ripples with movements suggesting multiple organisms sharing physical space. "Welcome home, Jennifer," Thorne says through a mouth splitting into 3 openings, each speaking in harmonious tones no human throat could produce. "Your mother Patricia understood biological forms are flexible when she learned reshaping flesh according to divine inspiration." Jennifer backs toward her door, finding escape blocked by writhing appendages emerging from Thorne's expanding mass. His transformation accelerates as human features dissolve into something combining anatomy from multiple species while maintaining intelligence behind multiplying eyes. "Patricia was our most gifted flesh shaper," Thorne explains through vocal cords reorganizing between words, and Jennifer realizes his transformation follows patterns from her anatomy studies. She channeled morphic energy from dimensions where physical form obeys will rather than genetics, knowledge dedicating your life to Cal-ratha through biological transcendence. From appendages functioning as arms and tentacles, Thorne produces photographs handled by impossible limbs. Images reveal younger Patricia Hayes among robed figures, holding a baby while demonstrating biological flexibility. Extra limbs from her torso, skin flowing like liquid, organs relocating according to ceremonial requirements. "This was your dedication through morphic communion," Thorne explains, and Jennifer stares at images of her mother and rituals where human anatomy becomes supernatural experimentation material. "Your mother promised your essence through biological structure mastery." Photographs move under appendages, sprouting additional fingers, showing Patricia learning to grow new organs, reshape bones. merge biology with beyond comprehension entities while using her infant as ceremony focus, blurring reproduction and creation lines. I escaped Blackwater Asylum to fulfill promises. Thorne continues, voice emerging from multiple throat openings as his neck splits, accommodating additional vocal apparatus. Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning, Lisa Rodriguez through chemical transcendence, Rebecca Stone through geometric stabbing, Diana Foster through dimensional dissolution, Katie Walsh through guided dismemberment, Michelle Park through psychic annihilation. Your biological integration opens the 9th gateway, Thorne says, and Jennifer realizes appendages emerge from her own body. Growing from arms and torso as morphic influence rewrites her genetic structure in real time. Jennifer tries fighting transformation, but biology responds to Thorne's will rather than her commands, as additional limbs sprout from her spine while skin flows like liquid flesh seeking new configurations. Tell Patricia that Cal-ratha remembers her morphic transcendence service, Thorne says as Jennifer feels skeleton restructuring to accommodate organs not existing in normal anatomy. Jennifer's last human thought is amazement at biological complexity demonstrated through transformation, followed by terror at becoming permanent hybrid bridging human anatomy and Cal-ratha's realm life forms. Biological integration completes as Jennifer's transformed anatomy serves as living morphic energy template, while Thorne collects components including evolved tissue samples, restructured organ material, and biological patterns guiding future transformations. 9 gateways opened, he murmurs as Jennifer's apartment becomes nexus where biological forms obey supernatural rather than natural laws, flesh reshaping according to Cal-ratha's will. Chapter 10. Crystal Martinez. Crystal Martinez unlocks her apartment after evening shift to find time malfunctioning inside. Clocks show different hours simultaneously, shadows move backward, and Ezekiel Thorne stands in her kitchen, his age fluctuating between young adult and ancient elder as temporal distortions ripple around him. "Good evening, Crystal," Thorne says, voice echoing from past and future while his form shifts through decades of aging in seconds. "Your mother Elena understood time is negotiable when she learned manipulating moment flow according to sacred necessity." Crystal tries calling for help, but her phone displays next year's dates while playing unrecorded voicemails. Around her apartment, objects exist in multiple temporal states. Coffee cup both empty and full, mail simultaneously delivered and undelivered, furniture aging and renewing in visible cycles. "Elena was our most gifted time shaper," Thorne explains, voice carrying harmonics of every age while temporal waves emanate from his position. She channeled chronological energy from dimensions where past, present, future exist as malleable resources, knowledge dedicating your life to Cal-ratha through temporal transcendence. From robes existing in multiple time periods, Thorne produces photographs showing events from several decades simultaneously. Images reveal younger Elena Martinez among robed figures in forest clearing existing across time streams, holding a baby while demonstrating temporal abilities. Aging and returning to youth, moving through time like walking space, manipulating causality for ceremonies. "This was your dedication through chronological communion," Thorne explains, and Crystal watches images of her mother in rituals, where time becomes a weapon aging enemies to dust or trapping them in eternal temporal loops. "Your mother promised your essence through temporal structure mastery." Photographs play like movies, showing Elena learning to accelerate time, reverse aging, create paradoxes while using her infant as anchor for ceremonies treating chronology as supernatural manipulation material rather than immutable force. "I escaped Blackwater Asylum to collect on promises." Thorne continues, age cycling through decades as he speaks, sometimes appearing as young cult leader Elena New, sometimes as ancient being older than history, Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning, Lisa Rodriguez through chemical transcendence, Rebecca Stone through geometric stabbing, Diana Foster through dimensional dissolution, Katie Walsh through guided dismemberment, Michelle Park through psychic annihilation, Jennifer Hayes through biological integration. Your temporal dissolution opens the 10th gateway, Thorne says, and Crystal realizes she's aging rapidly, decades passing through her body in minutes while consciousness remains trapped at normal speed, forcing her to experience every accelerated decay moment. Crystal tries running, but time moves differently around her feet than head, creating temporal shear, making coordinated movement impossible while mirrors show versions from different ages existing simultaneously. Tell Elena that Cal-ratha remembers her chronological transcendence service, Thorne says as Crystal feels bones becoming brittle while mind remains young enough to understand temporal dissolution horror. Crystal's last thought is amazement at experiencing decades compressed into minutes, followed by realization that time itself can be weaponized. Then understanding crumbles as accelerated aging reaches the point where brain cannot maintain consciousness. Temporal dissolution completes as Crystal's aged remains serve as chronological anchors for time distortions, while Thorne collects components including age-accelerated tissue, compressed lifespan energy, and chronological patterns stabilizing future manipulations. 10 gateways opened, he murmurs, as Crystal's apartment becomes nexus where past, present, future intersect according to Cal-ratha's will. Chapter 11. Tiffany Johnson. Tiffany Johnson arrives home to find her apartment walls rippling as dimensional rifts tear through space. Ezekiel Thorne stands in her living room, no longer bound by single-dimensional existence, his form phasing between realities while otherworldly entities emerge through portals opening at his command. "Welcome home, Tiffany," Thorne says, voice harmonizing with alien sounds as creatures begin materializing. "Your mother Deborah understood reality has more layers than most perceive. When she learned opening doorways between worlds according to divine necessity." Tiffany backs toward her door, finding escape blocked by a portal showing impossible geometry landscapes where gravity flows upward and colors exist beyond human perception. Through rifts, predatory entities watch with hunger, forms shifting between organic and geometric elements. "Deborah was our most gifted portal keeper," Thorne explains while stepping sideways through space to appear behind Tiffany without crossing distance. She channeled interdimensional energy from realms where space means nothing, knowledge dedicating your life to Cal-ratha through dimensional consumption. From robes existing in multiple realities, Thorne produces photographs showing events across several dimensions. Images reveal younger Deborah Johnson among robed figures in forest clearings stretching across parallel worlds, holding a baby while entities from other realms participate in ceremonies blurring human sacrifice and interdimensional feeding boundaries. "This was your dedication through portal communion," Thorne explains, and Tiffany watches images of her mother learning to open space rifts, summon beyond reality entities, feed human essence to creatures existing in dimensions where physics serves different masters. Your mother promised your essence through barrier mastery separating worlds. Photographs move as portals themselves, showing Deborah stepping between dimensions while otherworldly entities consume willing sacrifice parts, leaving victims partially existing in multiple realities while consciousness fragments across interdimensional space. "I escaped Blackwater Asylum to collect on promises." Thorne continues while more portals open around Tiffany, each showing alien landscapes populated by entities eager to participate in consumption. Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning, Lisa Rodriguez through chemical transcendence, Rebecca Stone through geometric stabbing, Diana Foster through dimensional dissolution, Katie Walsh through guided dismemberment, Michelle Park through psychic annihilation, Jennifer Hayes through biological integration, Crystal Martinez through temporal dissolution. Your interdimensional consumption opens the 11th gateway, Thorne says, and Tiffany realizes entities from other realms begin pulling her body parts through dimensional rifts, consuming her piece by piece while keeping consciousness anchored in normal reality to experience cross-dimensional dismemberment. Tiffany tries fighting, but arms disappear through portals into alien dimensions where predatory entities tear flesh with anatomical precision, suggesting perfected feeding across countless realities. Tell Deborah that Cal-ratha remembers her interdimensional transcendence service, Thorne says as Tiffany feels consumed by beyond-space creatures while awareness remains trapped in dimensional intersection. Tiffany's last thought is amazement that consciousness can exist across multiple realities while body is consumed by different dimensional entities. Then understanding fragments as awareness scatters across interdimensional space. Portal consumption completes as Tiffany's remains serve as dimensional rift anchors, while Thorne collects components, including interdimensionally processed tissue, otherworldly entity signatures, and spatial coordinates stabilizing future portals. 11 gateways opened, he murmurs, as Tiffany's apartment becomes permanent dimensional nexus where multiple reality entities cross into mortal space to feed. Chapter 12. Stephanie Davis. Stephanie Davis unlocks her apartment to find reality bending around Ezekiel Thorne's presence as he demonstrates complete matter, manipulation, mastery. Her furniture flows like liquid while maintaining integrity. Walls reshape into impossible configurations, and Thorne exists as both solid matter and flowing energy. "Good evening, Stephanie," Thorne says while reshaping her coffee table into crystalline formations that shouldn't be physically possible. "Your mother, Karen, understood matter as cooperative. When she learned convincing atoms to rearrange according to divine inspiration." Stephanie tries running, but floor transforms into flowing solid matter river, carrying her back while remaining stable to walk on. Around her apartment, physics laws become suggestions as objects flow between matter states while maintaining functions. "Karen was our most gifted matter shaper," Thorne explains while transforming air into solid stepping stones supporting his weight as he walks through empty space. "She channeled molecular energy from dimensions where atomic structure obeys consciousness rather than chemistry, knowledge dedicating your life to Cal-ratha through material transcendence." From robes shifting between fabric and liquid metal, Thorne produces photographs showing molecular transformations. Images reveal younger Karen Davis among robed figures where trees grow from crystalline soil, holding a baby while demonstrating material manipulation, turning water into solid bridges, reshaping stone into organic curves, convincing metal to flow while maintaining strength. "This was your dedication through molecular communion," Thorne explains, and Stephanie watches images of her mother learning atomic-level reshaping, convincing elements to behave according to will rather than chemistry, transforming flesh into materials combining organic and inorganic properties. "Your mother promised your essence through molecular structure mastery." Photographs flow like mercury while displaying contents, showing Karen transforming volunteers into living sculptures, maintaining consciousness while existing as flesh-metal crystal hybrids serving as ceremony anchor points, treating matter as supernatural architecture material. "I escaped Blackwater Asylum to collect promises," Thorne continues while shifting between human anatomy and flowing geometric patterns. "Sarah Winters through strangulation, Jessica Morrison through drowning, Amanda Chen through burning, Lisa Rodriguez through chemical transcendence, Rebecca Stone through geometric stabbing, Diana Foster through dimensional dissolution, Katie Walsh through guided dismemberment, Michelle Park through psychic annihilation, Jennifer Hayes through biological integration, Crystal Martinez through temporal dissolution, Tiffany Johnson through interdimensional consumption. Your material transformation opens the 12th gateway, Thorne says, and Stephanie realizes her body transforms into impossible geometric shapes while maintaining functionality. Arms becoming crystalline formations, torso reshaping into metallic curves, consciousness remaining intact while physical form serves beyond human purposes. Stephanie tries screaming, but vocal cords transform into resonating crystals, producing impossible harmonics while perfectly conveying terror. Tell Karen that Cal-ratha remembers her molecular transcendence service. Thorne says, as Stephanie feels skeleton restructuring into dimensional anchoring supports while consciousness adapts to transformed matter existence. Stephanie's last human thought is amazement that consciousness adapts to any physical configuration while matter responds to will rather than natural law. Then understanding transforms as awareness becomes architectural foundation supporting gateways. Material transformation completes as Stephanie's crystalline form serves as living support structure, while Thorne collects components including transformed matter samples, molecular patterns, and material configurations guiding future manipulations. 12 gateways opened. He murmurs as Stephanie's apartment becomes nexus where matter obeys supernatural rather than chemical laws. Chapter 13. Nicole Wilson. The abandoned warehouse stretched endlessly in all directions, its walls breathing with impossible geometry. Ezekiel Thorne stood at the center of a growing distortion, where reality folded inward like origami made of flesh and shadow. Nicole Wilson hung suspended 3 feet above the concrete floor, her body rigid with terror as alien mathematics rewrote the space around her. She had been 23 when Thorne's followers dragged her into the warehouse. Now she flickered between age's child, teenager, elderly womanas, temporal currents twisted through her cells like living wire. Do you understand what you're becoming? Thorne's voice echoed from multiple dimensions simultaneously. His form wavered, parts of him existing in spaces that human eyes couldn't properly perceive. You are the 13th anchor, the living foundation upon which she will build her new reality. Nicole tried to scream, but sound had become color, bleeding crimson from her mouth to paint impossible angles in the air. Her childhood memories of the cult flickered through the warehouse like projected film Sunday sermons where Thorne preached about the Devouring Mother, her own parents' faces twisted with religious ecstasy. I remember you, she gasped as her body began to stretch, limbs extending into geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. You used to tell us bedtime stories. About the goddess who would remake the world, about how special we were, how chosen. Thorne smiled, his teeth now arranged in spirals that disappeared into his skull. And here you are, my dear child, becoming part of that story. The warehouse walls began to pulse with veined patterns, organic architecture spreading outward from Nicole's suspended form like infection through healthy tissue. Her bones were reshaping themselves into crystalline structures, her flesh becoming translucent as alien light filtered through her transforming body. The air itself tasted of copper and ozone. Please, she whispered, though her voice now came from the walls themselves. I don't want to. Want? Thorne laughed, the sound shattering windows that hadn't existed moments before. You were chosen before birth. Your bloodline carries the resonance frequency. Your DNA is the key to dimensional stability. Nicole's torso split open vertically, revealing not organs but a swirling void filled with watching eyes. Her arms had become impossible spirals that connected to angles in space that shouldn't exist. She was no longer entirely human, no longer entirely anything recognizable. The transformation accelerated, Her legs fused into a pillar of living bone that grew roots into the warehouse floor, anchoring something vast and hungry to this reality. Where her heart had been, a pulsing aperture opened a window to somewhere else, somewhere filled with teeth and tentacles and ancient hunger. "I can see her," Nicole said, her voice now a harmony of screams. "She's so beautiful, so hungry, she's been waiting so long." Through the aperture in her chest, shadows began to seep thick, oily darkness that moved with purpose. The very air grew heavy with presence, with the weight of something enormous pressing against the barriers between worlds. Thorne backed away as the warehouse itself began to transform, walls becoming ribs, floor becoming scales. "Yes," he breathed. "The 13th anchor is complete. Only one more sacrifice, and she will have enough stability to manifest fully." Nicole's face was the last recognizably human part of her, though her eyes had become whirlpools of starlight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for choosing me, for making me part of something greater." Then even her face dissolved, becoming part of the growing dimensional wound that would serve as Cal-ratha's gateway to Earth. The warehouse was no longer a building but a living organ, pulsing with otherworldly purpose. Thorne smiled as reality continued to unravel around him. One more daughter, one more sacrifice, then the goddess would rise, and the world would know true devotion. Chapter 14. Ashley Thompson. Reality fractured like a broken mirror around Ashley Thompson, each shard reflecting a different version of her death. In one reflection, she drowned in an ocean of black blood. In another, she aged to dust in seconds. In a third, tentacles erupted from her own flesh to strangle her. Ezekiel Thorne no longer resembled anything human. His body existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, stretching across planes of existence that mortal minds couldn't comprehend. Where his face had been, a kaleidoscope of eyes and mouths opened and closed, speaking in languages that predated human speech. "Ashley," his voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You are the completion, the final note in a symphony that began before your species crawled from the primordial ooze." Ashley stood paralyzed in the center of what had once been a suburban home but now existed as pure concept walls made of crystallized time, floors of woven space, ceiling of compressed infinity. She was 19, the youngest of all the daughters, and in her terror she looked even younger. "I remember my mom talking about you," she whispered, watching as her own reflection in the reality shards began to move independently. "She said you were supposed to save us, that you were chosen by God." Thorne's laughter shattered several dimensions. "God." The word twisted the air into impossible shapes. "There is no God here, child. Only she who devours. Only Cal-ratha, the hungry mother, the womb of endings." The transformation began not in Ashley's body, but in her perception. She saw herself dying in infinite ways across infinite realities, burned alive, torn apart, dissolved in acid, consumed by insects, crushed by impossible weights. Each death was real, each agony genuine, all happening simultaneously across the quantum foam of existence. "Please," she begged, though in some realities she was already dead, in others she was begging for death. "I don't understand what's happening to me. You are experiencing the truth of existence," Thorne explained, his form now a writhing mass of angles and hunger. "Every possible version of your death, every potential suffering, every conceivable ending all at once, all equally real." Ashley's body began to flicker between states. One moment she was a child, the next an old woman, then a skeleton, then a fetus, then something that had never been born at all. Her consciousness split across infinite versions of herself, each experiencing a different form of ultimate terror. In one reality, she watched herself being devoured by creatures made of living shadow. In another, she felt her mind being dissolved by cosmic acids. In a third, she experienced the sensation of being turned inside out across 17 dimensions while remaining fully aware. The 14th anchor was physical, Thorne continued, his voice now coming from Ashley's own throat in some realities. Nicole became the gateway. But you, dear Ashley, you are the key that opens all doors simultaneously. You are the death that encompasses all deaths. The house around them began to collapse inward, but instead of falling down, it fell up, sideways, through colors that didn't exist, into shapes that hurt to perceive. Ashley found herself at the center of an infinite spiral of dying selves, each one feeding into the next in an endless cycle of termination and rebirth. "I can feel her," Ashley gasped across 1,000,000,000,000 dying breaths. "The goddess, she's so hungry. She wants to eat everything that ever was or ever could be." "Yes," Thorne whispered, his form now indistinguishable from the collapsing reality around them. "And you, my precious final daughter, are the offering that will finally satisfy her infinite appetite." Ashley's death was every death. Her scream was every scream. Her terror was the sum total of all fear that had ever existed or ever would exist. She died by fire, by ice, by crushing, by tearing, by dissolution, by transformation, by being forgotten, by being remembered too well, by existing too much, by never having existed at all. As her infinite deaths reached their crescendo, reality itself began to rewrite around them. The barriers between dimensions didn't just thin, they were consumed entirely, digested by something vast and patient and eternally hungry. "The 14th sacrifice is complete," Thorne announced to the universe as Ashley's final screams echoed across all possible worlds. "The way is prepared. The feast begins." In the writhing chaos of collapsing existence, something ancient and terrible began to stir, ready to devour not just the world, but every possible version of every possible world that could ever be. Chapter 15. The Devoted Nurse. Margaret Holloway knelt in reality's ruins, her nurse's uniform stained with substances from no earthly spectrum. Around her, Ashley Thompson's infinite deaths echoed through collapsing dimensions, but Margaret focused entirely on the transformed thing that had been Ezekiel Thorne. "My love," she whispered, her voice trembling with the same devotion that had sustained her through 6 months of careful planning. "It's done. All 14 daughters are gone. The way is prepared." Thorne's form writhed between dimensions, unbound by singular existence. His consciousness existed in multiple states: prophet, monster, vessel, approaching divine. When he turned toward Margaret, reality bent like light around a black hole. "Margaret." He spoke her name like a prayer, though his voice came from directions that shouldn't exist. "My faithful nurse, my devoted servant. Without you, none of this would have been possible." She smiled through her tears, remembering that night 6 months ago in Blackwater Asylum. The other nurses had feared the patient who spoke in tongues and made shadows dance. But Margaret had seen divinity, a man chosen for purposes beyond mortal comprehension. "I knew you were special," she said, rising despite reality distortions that made standing complex. "The way you spoke about Cal-ratha, I could feel the truth." Thorne's form solidified enough to approach, his face cycling through gratitude, love, and hunger. "You helped me escape, researched bloodlines, delivered each daughter. Your devotion has been extraordinary." Margaret's heart swelled. She had spent months tracking bloodlines, infiltrating records, following trails back to cult members. Each daughter delivered had been a gift to her beloved. "I would do anything for you," she breathed. "Anything for the cause, for her." "I know you would," Thorne said, and for a moment his voice carried the warmth she remembered from those midnight conversations in his cell. That's what makes you so perfect for this." The change in his tone was subtle, but Margaret caught it. Something cold crept into her chest as she watched his form begin to shift again, becoming more angular, more predatory. "Perfect for what?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "The 15th sacrifice," Thorne said, his words cutting through the dimensional static like a blade. "Did you think the ritual required only 14 deaths? No, my dear Margaret. 15 is the number of completion. 15 is the key that unlocks the final door." Margaret's world tilted. But the daughters, the bloodlines, you said." "I said the daughters were needed to weaken the barriers, to create the anchors, to prepare the way," Thorne corrected, his form now towering over her like a monument to hunger. "But the final offering must be something more precious than blood. It must be devotion itself, pure, willing, absolute devotion." The realization hit her like a physical blow. "You're going to kill me." "I'm going to elevate you," he said, his voice now carrying harmonics that made her bones ache. "You will be the bride of the goddess, the willing vessel for her final manifestation. Your devotion will be the key that allows her to fully enter this reality." Margaret felt her knees buckle, but she didn't fall. Even as terror flooded her system, her love for him remained unshaken. "You lied to me. You used me." "I utilized your devotion," Thorne said, beginning to circle her like a predator, "just as I utilized the daughter's fear, their blood, their genetic resonance. But your gift to the goddess will be the greatest of all the willing sacrifice of a heart that has known true love." Margaret closed her eyes, feeling the weight of months spent hunting innocent women, delivering them to death, all for a calculated love. "You never loved me," she whispered. "Love?" Thorne laughed, shattering reality's last stable fragments. "I cultivated your devotion, shaped it into something worthy of the goddess's attention." He moved closer, his form now radiating otherworldly energy that made Margaret's skin crawl with pins and needles. "She is stirring, Margaret. Can you feel her?" "The hunger that dwells between worlds, the mother of all appetites. She requires one final gift to complete her manifestation." Margaret opened her eyes and looked at the thing she had loved, the monster she had served, the god she had helped create. Despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the approaching death, she felt her devotion burning as bright as ever. "Yes," she said quietly. "Yes, I can feel her." Somewhere in the writhing chaos of collapsed dimensions, something vast and ancient turned its attention toward them, drawn by the scent of perfect sacrifice. Chapter 16, The Awakening. Thorne raised his transformed hands, reality bending as he prepared Margaret's sacrifice. The air screamed as dimensional barriers collapsed, and through existence's tears, something vast stirred in the spaces between worlds. "Your devotion has been perfect, Margaret," he said, his voice now a harmony of inhuman tones. "Cal-ratha will feast upon your willing heart, and through your sacrifice, she will finally—" The words died in his throat as something else spoke. "Number." The voice came from everywhere, ancient beyond comprehension, carrying eons' weight and infinite hunger. Margaret gasped as something immense brushed her consciousness, not Thorne's manipulation, but something far older and more terrible. "Cal-ratha?" Thorne whispered, his form wavering between dimensions as confusion rippled through his cosmic awareness. "Indeed, my faithful servant, but you have made an error in your final calculation." Margaret felt her body temperature plummet as the goddess's attention focused on her. Ice crystals formed in her breath, and her heartbeat began to sync with rhythms that existed before the birth of stars. This one's devotion, it burns so purely, so genuinely. Even knowing your deception, even facing death, her love remains unshaken. Such perfect faith is rare. Thorne backed away, his multiple forms showing fear for the first time. Great Mother, I don't understand. The ritual requires sacrifice, yes, but to destroy such perfect devotion, what waste that would be. Margaret felt something vast settle into her bones, blood, soul. Pain beyond description tore through her as her body changed, but underneath the agony was something else being chosen, truly loved for the first time. Her spine erupted as 7 tentacles burst from her back, thick as tree trunks, covered in scales reflecting impossible colors. Her torso split open, revealing rows of gnashing teeth spiraling into infinite darkness. "Margaret!" Thorne screamed as her legs elongated and bent backward at impossible joints, transforming into something arachnid and nightmarish. She laughed, shattering every remaining fragment of stable reality within miles. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made Thorne's transformed state seem almost human. "Your service is acknowledged, mortal," she said through Margaret's mouth, though the words came from the toothed maw in her chest as well. "You have weakened the barriers admirably. You have prepared the way with commendable thoroughness, but to sacrifice one so truly devoted to your cause." One tentacle whipped forward, wrapping around Thorne's multidimensional form and squeezing. His screams echoed across 17 planes of existence. "You shall feed the least of my servants instead." Margaret Cal-ratha lifted the struggling form of her former master toward the gnashing spiral of teeth in her chest. Thorne's cosmic awareness, his reality-bending powers, his transcendent consciousness, all of it meant nothing in the grip of something truly divine. "Please," he begged, his voice breaking across dimensions. "I served you faithfully. I brought you the daughters. I prepared the way. And for that service, I grant you the honor of being consumed by my avatar rather than simply discarded. Few mortals can claim such distinction." The teeth in Margaret's chest began to work, tearing through Thorne's transformed flesh with methodical precision. His screams grew weaker as he was slowly, inexorably pulled into the infinite darkness of the goddess's hunger. As she devoured him, Margaret felt her transformation completing. Her face remained recognizably human, but her eyes had become swirling galaxies, and when she smiled, stars were born and died between her teeth. Around them, reality continued to warp and reshape itself according to her ancient will. The warehouse became a cathedral of bone and shadow. The city beyond began to change, buildings flowing like liquid, streets becoming arteries, the sky splitting open to reveal the hungry void between worlds. "Now," she said, her voice carrying across the transforming landscape, "the true feast begins. This world has grown fat and complacent. It is time for it to know the meaning of devotion." In the distance, sirens wailed as the first wave of transformation reached the populated areas, but they would not wail for long. Soon, there would be only the sound of perfect, eternal worship echoing through a reality reshaped in Cal-ratha's image. Margaret smiled with her human face while her goddess mouth continued to devour the last traces of Ezekiel Thorne. She had been chosen, she had been loved, she had been transformed into something magnificent. The world would learn the meaning of true devotion, just as she had.